Start recording.
Okay, so we are being recorded. Welcome. We'll call the meeting to order. The Beaverton Traffic Commission. Today is July 1st, 2021. It is 7:06. Thank you, everyone who has attended, either as a guest, an attendee, or council, or our liaison. So thank you for that. We'll begin with the roll call. Commissioner Bobadilla. Commissioner Bobadilla.
Present.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Moore. Sherry, I saw there was a point with the audio. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Urbanski.
Present.
And Chair Conway present. A reminder then that Commissioner Brown has resigned, Commissioner Nakamura has resigned, and Vice Chair McLean is absent and excused. So we do have a quorum this evening to begin, and we can take care of our regular information. So first up, are there any visitor comments, Ms. Warner?
So far, no.
Okay, thank you. Next would be staff comments, Mr. Khasho.
I sent you a memo little late with some calculations on percentages for traffic calming. And today I also sent 2 letters that was forwarded to us. It's from the principals of the 2 schools on Wilson Avenue, the Fair Grove Elementary and the Highland Middle School.
Perfect, thank you. The next thing is the only item we have on our consent agenda is the meeting minutes from the last time we met, which would be from June 3rd, 2021. They were pretty hefty, and I did look them over. So I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of the meeting minutes from our 6/3/21 meeting.
Second.
Second. So motion made by Chair Conway, seconded by Commissioner Bobadilla, and then roll call then. Commissioner Bobadilla.
Aye.
Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
Commissioner Urbanski.
Aye.
And then Chair Conway's aye. So motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Next up then is the workshop items for this meeting. We do not have a formal agenda because we are going to discuss what some options are for the ballot portion of the traffic calming program. We, at the last meeting, had several discussions about the scope of the project as well. But one of the things that we decided on, I believe, if I understood the commission right, was that we'll begin this meeting with just an approach and look at reviewing the balloting process. And if we need to expand different aspects, we should do that in parts instead of trying to do this all at one time. So with that in mind, then, Mr. Khasho, you had sent out the comment from the school and then also the traffic count. So I appreciate that because those are very helpful. I think we begin with just, could you recap that real quick, or?
Yeah, I will go over it in a minute.
Okay.
But I think we have some testimony from people in the waiting room before we get into it.
Oh, okay, very good.
Okay.
I'll let Ms. Warner, I'll let you manage that, as I do not, I don't see that on my list, so please.
Okay, I'll promote connect to a panelist.
Thank you. And Kenneth, if you'll, you had some comments?
Well, I'm here, I think, as your guys' guest. You asked that I might step into this meeting in case you had any questions about the BCCI presentation or feedback. But I do have something that might be helpful to you. see if I can open it, and I prepared a table. I am a novice at the sharing the screen thing, but
You can also email that to,
no, that's Jabra's.
all right, because we can also email that to Ms. Warner and she could present it as well.
Yeah. I think can you see it now?
No.
Nope, I just see that it's trying to
Oh,
start. There we go.
There it goes. This is just a bunch of different voting scenarios, and what that would translate into number of votes per 100. I just thought that might be a helpful thing to look at as you're looking at the voting process.
Okay, thank you.
And now it stopped again, I think. I'll try to email it. Oh, start.
Is that, yeah, is that a spreadsheet that,
It's just a table. It has examples and how they translate into minimum return, minimum to pass, and none of the examples included a non-return ballot.
okay, and I see that Miles has emailed that over, so that would be good if we can
Okay, thank you.
pass that around too. All right,
Otherwise, I'll just stand by in case you guys have questions.
okay, and did you meet since the last traffic commission meeting?
We haven't. I had a summary of to the general BCCI, but we didn't have another traffic calming work group meeting.
Okay, very good. Ms. Warner, was there somebody else then?
It's Miles. I'm not sure if he is just here in support or if he has anything to say. But I did forward his email to all of you just now.
Okay,
He's
excellent, thank you.
He's just here in support.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, we'll wait for that. And I don't see that yet. Okay, so is there anything else? There were no other comments or anything that, all right, Mr. Khasho, then did you have something else you wanted to bring up before you went over the presentation? You have a couple of comments or thoughts or?
Yeah. I have a comment about how does the schools respond when we send them a response card?
They don't. It's their policy not to vote when they receive those cards.
In the past, exactly. In the past, we always sent cards and they will not return them. They will not even abstain, from the vote. For those reasons, at least, if they'll abstain, at least that one card will be taken from the total and it would help. But they always said we did not want to go to either side of this, and they want to stay neutral. That's why they will never return the cards. It's been a policy from over 20 years, and it seems like it continues to be their policy. They have not changed.
So can I ask if there's a concern specifically about school traffic calming or mitigation, how are those addressed? Where do we go with those concerns if they're not participating in the traffic calming process?
Typically, schools, when they have concerns, they work with their safety director. That's the first thing they do, is they work with their internal staff. And then they will connect with us. I go to their monthly meetings, and sometimes they bring it up at the meeting, or they call me for certain things, and that's how we work things out. Also, I work closely with the Safe Route to School coordinator, and we did quite a few things, working with her.
Okay,
that-
so Safe Routes to School has told us that they are putting us on their agenda, Wilson Street on the agenda list for school safety. Can I contact you later and we could talk a little more about how we would work with you on that?
If the school is working with us, then we'll work with the school, but you're welcome to participate if you would like to. If they're going to do an audit, because sometimes they'll invite different groups from the school, from other agencies like Washington County, they're involved, and they divide the group into smaller groups, and each group will watch certain portion of the street. And basically they watch what happens, and then at the end of the day, they will report all to the safe route coordinator, where she puts all that data or comments they have. And we try to come up with solutions, what we can do and what we cannot do too. So that's how, when they do a street audit, that's what they do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, that's the dog.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so let's get into it now. Yeah, last time we did hit on few points, which way we're gonna go. We said, oh, what about 51%? What about 67% of the cars come back, and 67 of them will be, if it's yes, then the project will go. And I was told this is too complicated. So I said, okay, and I promised from the last meeting that I will take those projects that did not make it and try to play with different ideas about it. How does it pan out when you do each thing separately? Do they pass, or they do not pass? So I'm gonna share my screen now to get that table on the screen, and we could go one by one, so you know what I did. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna enlarge it so we can see. So the first column is those were the 4 projects from 2018 that they did not make it. It's Bonnie Bray Street, Barlow Road, Wilson Avenue, and 130th Avenue. Second column is the year we worked with them, and that's when the plan was developed. First column here with the numbers past the year is how many cards were sent out. So for Barlow Road, it was 78 cards. For Bonnie Bray, 78, Barlow, 83, Wilson Avenue, 132. And the reason Wilson Avenue is high, there's a multifamily units next to it, across from the Fairgrove Elementary near Allen Boulevard. So that's why the number is higher. Plus the street is too long. 130th Avenue was, we had 93 cards. So out of those cards, the blue column is people who abstained. So we see 3 cards for Bonnie Bray, Barlow 3, Wilson Avenue 6, and 130th had 1. The green column is the number of yes cards that they came back. So out of the 78, for Bonnie Bray, 39 came with yes, and the red column is the no, and 5 no. For Barlow, out of the 83, 41 yes and 6 no. Wilson Avenue, 58 yes cards and 17 no. 130th had 36 yes and 21 no's. So if we look at the percentage, how many total number of cards returned, that's the total number on this column. Then the percentage of the cards returned, how many cards were returned as a total, including abstain, yes, and no. So it looks like if you look at this column, 2 of them are 60%, Wilson Avenue 61, and 130th 62. So I said, no, this is a good indication that typically we get 60% of the cards back out of the total. And we have to keep this in mind. Then I did the percentage of the cards that they were yes. So here we have Bonnie Bray had 50. Barlow had 49, Wilson 44, and 1/30th is 39 cards, 39%. So the next column, based on the current criteria where we require 67%, and this is the percentage of the cards that they were yes of the total. So, no, just a second here. Oh, no, this is the required number of the cards to pass. So for Bonnie Bray, we need 50 cards. We got 47 yes. For Barlow, we need 54. They got 50 yes, so they're short 4. For Wilson Avenue, we needed 84. And the yes cards were 58. Here I was looking at the different columns. So this is you have to compare this column with the green column. Sorry about this. So they needed 50, they only got 39. Barlow need 54, they got 41. Wilson, they need 84, they got 58. And 130th, they need 62, and they got 36. So we said, okay, let's look at scenario 1. Let's say we decide to switch the program that we would require only 51% of the total number of cards to be yes. So I looked at it and none of them made it. Like Bonnie Bray, 51, they're short 1. Barlow, they're short 2. Wilson Avenue, they're short 6%. 130th, they're short 11%. So even if we went to 51%, none of these streets will make it. Then I said, okay, let's look at another scenario, which will say 67% of the cards needs to come back. It doesn't matter what they are. Yes, no, abstain. And we will say, okay, we need to have 67% of those to be yes. And by doing this, and you look at the percentage of cards returned, none of them will make this either. They will all have no pass because they're all less than 67% of the total cards returned. So even the number of cards coming back with no yes or abstain did not come back as 67%. So it did not meet that criteria. So I said, okay, I'll lower the standard a little bit a notch and see if this will work. So I said, okay, let's say 60% of the cards back and 67% of those returned needs to be yes. By doing this, the percentage skyrocketed. I mean, we have like Bonnie Bray will make it straight without any glitch, 83%. Barlow, 82%. Wilson Avenue, 72%. And only 1/30th will fail. They will not make it, 62%. So I thought, okay, you know, playing with it this way, it tells you, I mean, we're pushing it to make these projects pass. And the way I thought about this, I said, okay, when we have 60%, then we're almost the majority of the people at least responded to the project. So there is a good reason here to consider the 60%, you know, over 51% send their cards in. So that's a good percentage. But also 67% of those, the super majority of what came back, also wanted it. So it shows that it will work. So there is some merit to this scenario 3. I thought it's maybe, you know, I think it's probably one of the best options. And it shows the reason why. I mean, look at 130th. They had 36 yes out of 93. And 21 were no. So it tells you this is a dead project. And sure enough, in scenario 3, it showed that it's dead. It didn't make even 62%, yeah, barely. So this is what I promised I'll do, and here's the results, and I'll let you think about it and let you discuss it and see what you think, which way we're gonna go. And I also sent you what other cities do, and it's a bag of mixed things, you know. There is 2 or 3 they used our methodology exactly, 67%. There is some who requires 67% to come back and 51% to say yes of the 67 that comes back. There is some city who splits it, you know, if the neighborhood is developed, then different percentage. But I thought scenario 3 kind of, it's a blend of what we do and what other cities do. It's not really one of the lowest percentages that you see in that mix, and it's not the highest. So it's kind of a balance between what you get in, and also you're still above the majority requirement. So if you look at it, it could be, you know, in the high 40s as a percentage if you do it straight. With this, I will stop here, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, sir. First, are there any questions from Commissioner Urbanski?
Jabra, could you put your that table back up again?
Yeah, sure.
Because I want to refer to option 3, where 3 of the 4 reevaluated scenarios passed, right?
Yeah.
That might not actually be correct though, because it assumes that some people who didn't return their cards may have essentially voted no, but they just didn't return the card because it meant the same thing to them. So in this case, if a non-return no longer counts as a no vote, there will probably be more returns, and you will start to see more no votes appearing. So that 72%, for example, for the 3rd row may end up being lower and may not actually pass, because right now a lot of people can't be bothered, or they don't want to tell their neighborhood that they voted no, so they're just simply not returning, or they may want to save on the postage. They don't think that the city should be charged for the postage, and so they're just not returning the cards because it's essentially a no vote. So
yeah,
what I'm saying, the no votes there may be some hidden no votes that will only surface when we change to scenario 3.
Yeah.
So there's some hidden no votes that we're not seeing, basically.
Yeah, this one did not consider the no votes, the non-return cards, they're not part of the calculations here at all. So that, yeah, potentially, like you suggested, maybe people will start sending their no cards, but we have to try to see if this is going to happen or not. You know, I mean, we're guessing right now. It could materialize or it could not. I don't know. It's a tough. But what you said has merit. You know, if truly people don't want it, they will say no and send it out. At least it's based on facts that those people send their cars back because they did not want it.
Right, I agree. So either way, we'll get more negative responses if that's what the people really want. Yeah. So I like the third option. Yeah.
So 2 points I'd like to make clear. I think that to Commissioner Urbanski's point, which I think was key when I heard the city council's discussion in their previous meeting about their comments, and that was the whole no vote is not a vote doesn't make sense. It's clearly in the rules. It says in the rules in the ballot that not returning this is the same as a no. So you're basically telling them, to Commissioner Urbanski's point, that if they don't return it, that's a no vote. So they are speaking their mind. So a certain percentage of them, if you require them to return it to be no, it'd be interesting to see what that changes. The other thing, Mr. Khasho, that I was curious about, and I had only alluded to it before, I should have explicitly asked for it, I think earlier, the difference between requiring only 51% of the affected property owners to start the process, but then we send it out to a much larger audience that may not have actually heard of it. Is there a consideration for raising the requirement of, if you sent out, I think if you scroll over, there were 132 on, and like Wilson, for example, there's a significant, to me, a fair number of people who had a opinion of no, but 132 were mailed out. How many people did it actually take to get that started?
It's less than that. It's 51%, yeah, but it
right,
was.
because I went through there and looked the same as Barlow. When I looked at Barlow, there are not 83 homes on there. I went up and down the street and I counted. I also counted on Wilson, which was one of the things I think was interesting on Wilson, is that between the two schools and the church, that there's better than 50% of that road with 3 property owners, quote unquote. So it seems like one of the things that impacts the numbers are the people that get a ballot and they conceivably didn't even know what the process was. Although I put that onus back on the NAC to whoever started this should be raising awareness for it. But do we have any idea of what the numbers are?
Well, the NACs aren't notified necessarily that there's a project going on, so that would be a good thing to be included in the process, I think, to help.
Well, and sorry, I guess it's really the person that started it, because most of the time these have gone through the NAC. At some point, the NAC has the meeting. So I just was curious why the number of cards sent out to get it started versus the number of people who are actually going to be involved at the end.
Can I stop sharing? And I have those numbers on a different spreadsheet. I will get it. Just let me stop sharing now and I will pick those numbers for you.
And while he's, please.
Jabra, on Wilson, I thought that what you originally sent me was 106 ballots that were sent. You said that you got the 132 includes part of Wilson. I'm not sure how you got the.
Well, there are 132 sent out, but I don't believe that it took 132, or it would be interesting. Part of the problem, Kenneth, that I'm concerned about, that I was asking Mr. Khasho for that is that in some of, in all of the other examples up until the last couple of years, there really hasn't been a problem and the system is working. So suddenly in basically this one central area within this one NAC, more or less, with the exception of you look at, well, not Barlow, if you look at the area, this seems to be where people are saying, hey, this isn't working, but it's worked before. So I'm just trying to understand what the difference in cards, because Barlow is a short road, but it had so many cul-de-sacs along the edge, and Wilson is so long that it just seems like they're both the numbers
Yeah,
of what it
Wilson's
takes
an
to get that started and then what it takes for that. But I'll wait for Mr. Khasho, but that was my logic and thought.
But the 100 that I'm talking about came from the engineering, traffic engineer. That was their figure, so that's why I was wondering. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Jabra.
Yeah, Wilson Avenue, actually, the total number of homes they needed to get signatures from to get the 51% were 72 when we started. That's how we started the program.
Okay, so 72 homes on Wilson,
Yeah.
but then you sent
But then after
132. That's a pretty big.
yeah, after you start developing the plan expands because of where the traffic calming devices are going to be. So the area, the influence area increases and the voting area increases. And that's why it got up to that point. Because during the meeting, sometimes, you know, the requester starts on a small section and then they start, oh, let's do this, add this, and it just starts expanding. But you know, it's between certain limits, and it was between Hart and Allen Boulevard, so it's a long stretch. So it ended up being this high, and but we always had signs on the street to notify people of the project, and anybody who come even to the meeting that is not on the first list that we send out, we always add them to the mailing list, and the mailing list keeps expanding every time, you know, as the project expands. So at the end, everybody knows that there is a project going on. Yeah, Wilson Avenue is a long street, and it's really tough, you know, to sometimes to cover everybody, especially when you start looking at the side streets and adding the side streets. Those will add up too, because to start the 51%, we only look at the homes that on the street itself, because at the time we don't know, is there going to be traffic calming device here or there, or is the project going to go through, is the plan going to happen or not. So the 51%, even the program says it's people who live on the street, you know, mainly. It's just to make sure that people who are on the streets are willing to participate and come up with a plan. That's the whole reason for that 51% to initiate the project.
It would be an interesting street to take for Ernie's point about why this street or why this project. That's aside from having the two schools that have a large frontage on that street and so don't vote, it's also an area, Wilson Park area has quite a few rental properties. So some of those places would have gotten 2 votes. A lot of the houses would have had 2 ballots, and an owner ballot and a renter ballot. And what just from anecdotal information, given that it's anecdotal, the renters would like something done. The owners tend to return votes where they don't necessarily want changes made.
It all depends, you know. Some do, some don't. It's really hard to guess, you know. Truly, they don't return or they don't want anything done. But yeah, that's why the numbers got larger as the project proceeded. The side streets were included. The project expanded a little bit.
Jabra, if there's such a long street like Wilson, is there any merit into breaking it up into segments and dealing with them separately? If there's a hot spot, focus that as one
Yeah,
road and then,
we had this option, we asked them sometimes. When we see a long street, we say, you want to break it down to 2 groups, but if both makes it, that will be good. If not, then one will get built, the other will not, And then they say, no, we want to go as a whole. It has a better chance than breaking it down. So yeah, we have this option. Yeah. And I said it at the last meeting too, that if we agree on certain percent and we change the process and the program, we could bring these projects back. I mean, if they make it, like Wilson and the other 2 projects, we could bring them back and say, hey, we're gonna pull the plan again, or we'll probably bring it back to the commission to figure out a way. Do we take it the way it came in and we go ahead and start constructing these projects, or we should pull the plan again, or whatever we want to do. But first, let's come up with the new methodology on the percentage, and then we'll work it out later on.
Can I just ask you one question about the 60% return requirement? Because I noticed Lake Oswego and Eugene only require 50%. And looking at the numbers you presented in the table, I don't think it would make any difference to us if we had 50 or 60, because at 60%, all 4 of those projects would have made it through the first step, right, at 60%. So
Yeah,
why not call it 50? And it will sound less restrictive, even though won't make any difference really.
yeah,
And it'll be more in line with what Lake Oswego and Eugene have.
Yeah, we tried this. We tried the 51%, and
No, just for the returns, not for the and then the 3/4, the 2/3 vote.
yeah, because if let's say you get the 51 return, how many of them needs to be yes?
67%.
67%. So you're lowering it less than the 60 I suggested. The scenario.
Yes, because it doesn't look like it will make much difference, because you're still going to get 60% of the people responding, as your data shows. It just will seem more fair to people who complain.
So what you're saying is we'll get the simple majority back,
Yes.
51%, and 67% of those needs to be yes.
Yes. That way it looks like you're not being restrictive, and based on your data, you're going to get at least 60% of the people returning it anyway.
Are you?
It's based on the historical data you showed.
Yeah,
But it will look like we're being more fair, even though
but also you
get
know,
the same returns.
When you reduce the number, sometimes people get lazier and they will not return their cards. But I'm with you. Yeah, whatever the commission decide, you know, we're open to that. 60%, 51%. It's not that much difference.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait until Commissioner Urbanski's done.
Yeah. So just emphasize, it's the returns, not the vote. The vote is still 67%, but just the number of returns. Yeah.
Okay, because I guess the question then to me is, are you trying to get these to pass? Because I agree with Mr. Khasho in that you need more than 51. I mean, 67% of 51 means that you're kind of back to the whole scenario of what percentage of people are needed. 30% of the neighborhood can basically set the precedent for the whole thing, right? So the idea is, to me, to establish a fair number of returns and a fair number within that. It's not to get these to pass. The systems work for 30 some years, and all of a sudden you have one, which if you look at the city, this is a crossroads within the city, right? Nobody wants to take Allen. Nobody wants to take Hart, and Murray, and Hall. that's the area, right? So part of the consideration is maybe there's a problem with the traffic flow somewhere else. But to be fair, it doesn't seem like we're trying to get this to lower it just to pass. To me, I appreciate the thought of Mr. Khasho's numbers, and that I want to see a fair majority of people actually have to respond, because when you look at the numbers, there are people who are saying explicitly, I'm sending my ballot and I don't like this. So
But again, Ernie,
Yeah, but-
I think that
Oh.
the feedback from the neighborhoods was essentially, they didn't care if you raised the bar to a 67% from a 51 in order to pass. What they didn't want was for non-returned ballots to be added to no votes, which were frequently only 6% or 5% of the vote.
okay, but I think
So
that
if you can do, if you want to keep the bar high, that's doable by adjusting the percentage required to pass.
that is correct. My point, I think, that I made last time though was it does returning a ballot wasn't a no. That was never the issue. The issue for the neighborhood is
No,
they
that
need-
was the
they need
issue.
60, well, but they need 67% of the people to say yes. 67%, no matter how many ballots came back, they needed 67% of those to agree to the process. So it didn't matter how many people didn't return a ballot. And it didn't matter how many
mattered
said no.
that-
What you needed was 67% of the population.
No, it did matter. I mean, that was specifically the information that's in the testimony letters.
Yeah, I
And
understand that.
And if you add so non-return ballots accounted for around 40, isn't it right, Jabra? Around 40 to 50%
30,
of the
39,
ballots.
38, 40%, yeah.
Yeah, of ballots. That has the ability to change the percentages and knock out the yes percentages.
But they don't in the numbers that were sent out before, I guess my point, unless I completely misunderstood. If you send out 100 ballots, it doesn't matter how many people said no and how many people didn't return a ballot. What you needed was 67 votes that said yes. It didn't matter how many ballots came back, right? It doesn't matter how many people didn't return a ballot. And it doesn't matter how many people said no. What it needed was.
So it did
67
matter
votes that
because
said
they were
yes.
adding the non-returned ballots to the no votes. So you went from a no vote that came in at 6% going to a.
Okay, but that's a different the way it was written. The way it was written was, except for abstains, the number of ballots under the current process, if they didn't return their ballots and you had 67 votes that were good, it passed. You could get 0 no votes. You could get 37 no votes, or 33 no votes, or 33 non-returns. But if you had 67 people who returned their ballot and said yes, it passed. It didn't matter what the percentage of no not returned was. So the key that we heard from the neighborhood, though, was that you wanted to adjust the percentage that it takes to pass that. But under the old way, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Khasho, under the old way, it didn't matter how many no votes and how many people didn't return ballot. That didn't impact the number of yes votes needed. It in no way ever impacted it.
Go ahead, Jabra.
Yeah, it's because it requires 67% yes. So as long as you get those 67 yes, you're covered. Yeah, they know that it doesn't matter then.
But the problem with percentages is that they change. They're not absolute numbers, so they change with the addition of a 40% to the no vote.
So basically, we're changing basically the total number of cards will be reduced, based on, if we're not going to consider the cards that did not return. For example, let's say we have 100 cards and we got 66 cards yes, and we got 20 no's. So this project fails because we didn't get that extra card to make the 67%. So it's still based on the total. But when you say, okay, we're not gonna count the no votes, then that total number will be reduced. And that's what you were after, to reduce the number of cards. So it will be based on the number of cards that comes back, basically, regardless, it's yes or no.
Right, and I think that was, and just a moment, Commissioner Urbanski, that was why, one of my point for the BCCI was to come back with a recommendation and a specific solution set to what do you do, and they said, well, we need to change a no vote shouldn't be a no, well, or a non-return shouldn't be a no. That what we were looking for was exactly what your point is here. The system says you need 67 votes to pass. It doesn't matter how many no votes there are. What you're asking is you want a way to lower the percentage of returned ballots to change the voting number. That's what you're asked. That's what the request would have helped if BCCI would have said, this is what we're suggesting or recommending, because the no votes don't impact the percentage at all. Whether they're returned or not, as Mr. Khasho said, doesn't matter. What matters is, can you get 67% of the votes of the ballots that were sent out of the people that have to vote? That's all that matters. So, Commissioner Urbanski, before I want to.
I think the complaint really is that the people who are for these changes have to do all of the hard work, and they're frustrated because they feel there are some, let's say, lazy people who just can't be bothered and they're being penalized. So here's an alternate scenario. If you were to send out the cards and demand that the new calming plan was going to pass unless there were 33% no votes returned, it would still be the same question, really, but now the onus is on the people who want to oppose it. They have to do something to oppose it. They're the ones that have to return the cards. It's still the 67% people in the neighborhood will be for it, but you've just twisted it around. So it's going to pass unless 33% say no.
But also here, it's the same way. People who doesn't care, it means you'll get their yes vote, yeah.
But that's why they're complaining, I think. That's the real essence.
But the issue, I think, and what BCCI I would have thought they would have done was say, the ballot should not include the verbiage that says not returning a ballot is a no vote, right? That's where everybody seems to be up in arms, is that not returning a ballot is the same thing as no. Of course it does. It says so in the ballot. So the recommendation and the solution should be, if you're going to adopt rule number 3, you also need to take, in my opinion, make very clear that you need to return a ballot in order for it to be a yes, and you need to return a ballot in order to be a no, and you need to return a ballot if you prefer to be an abstain. All right. That's part of it. I think the other thing to the piece is that everybody knows that the school district does not take part. They don't want to take sides either way. But I haven't heard anybody approach the school and say, hey, for my neighborhood, would you please send in an abstain? That you're not making a statement by just abstaining, right? I mean, that's some of the pieces in here that are more than just that. But to me, I agree that number 3 holds us to a higher standard and accountability. But I think that to the BCCI's point, if you don't want that, then you should take out the point and be very clear. You have to return a ballot in order to be counted. Not returning it is the same as not voting. That's the key that everybody had kept missing before, because the rule was very clear. There was no problem with it. Not returning the ballot never affected the percentage. Not returning the ballot was basically saying,
no, what affected the percentage was counting the non-returned ballots with the no votes. That's what had been happening.
They were never counted. It was always the number of votes yes. I think to Commissioner Urbanski's point, that the whole point was, we're not counting how many no's you get. What we were saying was 132 ballots were sent out for Wilson. What's the magic number for 67 votes, 67% yes? That's the only thing that mattered. How many yes votes did you get?
And that would work. That
Didn't
would
know how
work
many
if
were not
you were
returned.
using designated total voters, but I don't think we were. We were using the
100
return votes.
No, 130, no. 132 ballots were sent out, so you needed 67% of 132 to be yes. That's all you needed. You didn't care how many people returned their ballots as no. You didn't care how many people didn't return the ballot. You needed 67% of 132 to be yes, and that's all that mattered. That's the only thing that mattered.
Hey,
Is
can,
that Commissioner Bobadilla?
sorry, and Sherry's hand's been up too for a while, so can you?
Oh,
let
I'm
me
so
know?
she's like,
Oh,
where's,
sorry.
why is she
Yeah.
on?
We're both up.
Oh,
but
there
I-
you are. I'm sorry. I totally, I can't see it in the white here. Let me move this. Please,
have a-
Commissioner Bobadilla.
I need clarification. So my understanding is that the non-return ballots were never factored into the final decision as to whether it passed or not. Is that correct? They were never counted as no. They were never considered. If they didn't return it, basically I'm going to say we never cared about it. We did not factor that in. Is that right? Jabra?
Correct, because we needed the 67% yes out of the total.
Okay, because I think then I'm with Cotton and shared that I think there's a misunderstanding of how maybe the rule is being written and how it's written is being interpreted improperly. Maybe it's a verbiage issue that we need to clarify and clean up, maybe. So let me follow up with a question. So from what I'm hearing now from Ernie then is that really it was just whatever has gone out, even if we sent out 200 ballots, we just need 67% of those ballots to be yes, and it passes, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Why? Two questions. One, why don't we just do a simple majority of it being 51% of those ballots that are sent out? Why 67? Why such a weird number?
At the time, it was the super majority because they want to make sure that people who live on the street are convinced of the project and they want it. They didn't want to, build the project and later on, few years later on, they'll ask to take them out.
And I understand that, but even
That was the concept that the Traffic Commission came up with at the time.
and I understand, and thank you for clarifying that, but even like the whole number 67 for the mass majority of the public out there doesn't understand that. It just seems so complex.
But
even like maybe people can understand a more rational 65, 55, I'm sorry, but it doesn't, people don't understand their rationale. The other follow-up I need a clarification here on then is, it seems to be that I was under the understanding too that the no votes were being counted, though, Jabra, as no votes. I mean, I'm sorry, that non-return ballots were being counted as no votes. I'm with her, with BCCI, that I was under that impression too of all this.
I tell you why people think of it this way. Because what happened is residents started comparing it with the actual voting we do. Because when we do a vote for a politician, it's based on the number of cards that they come back. It's not how many people, how many ballots sent out. For example, let's say we sent out 100 cards or 100 ballots sent out to the residents. Only 50 of them came back. 26 of them were yes, and 24 were no. And they said, okay, who won the election? The person with the 26. So that's the confusion is. They're saying, okay, you should base it on the number of cards that they come back, not the number of cards you send at the beginning.
But I appreciate what Ernie was bringing back and the history, the knowledge he has. I think it's really more of a language issue that we need to clean up maybe, and just maybe simply come up and lower the number if we want to. But it sounds like a language issue to clear it up so people really understand how things are being calculated and why things are failing. Because I do agree with Ernie here. I'm in favor of traffic calming devices, but I am concerned that you brought this up, Jabra, right now, that a lot of these things have been working for so many years. They did, and they're there. They've been working for a reason. Are we forcing these 3 or 4 projects to go through? Is that what we're trying to do? And if we do, this is precedence for the future, though.
Yeah, but also the city council, wanted to reduce the percentage to make sure neighborhoods has the chance to pass with their project. Again, it's because we're basing it on the number of cars that they went out. And many people said, no, it should be based on, it's not fair. It's people who vote on it, those who will judge or govern which way it's going to go.
And I understand that people think it's not fair, but I think it's a lot of people think it's not fair when you don't understand the rule of how things are being calculated. But if they are, it
I mean,
probably is.
yeah, at the meetings, we explain it pretty well, and we'll say, this is what happens.
Well,
And
I was confused, Jabra, right now here. I was thinking like BCCI that they were being, and I'm sorry, I'm a lawyer. I read contracts. And from what was going on right here, I was under the understanding that the no votes were being counted. And this is one of the main reasons of why this was failing. So maybe it's a language issue, and it could simplify things and clear it, because now I'm also more concerned more with Ernie and like, whoa, I feel like we're forcing to make these projects pass now. And these can be some really strong consequences for a lot of future development. So just like we need to be more cautious in that.
Yeah, I'll let Jabra answer, and then I'd like to let Sherry have a couple of minutes, because I know my apologies that I totally missed it. Her camera's not on, so I completely missed, and the white behind it is sometimes hidden. That happened last meeting too, so my apologies.
Let Commissioner Moore go, and we'll see. I'll comment later on.
Commissioner Moore?
Thank you. My perception is very much has been spoken by Commissioner Bobadilla. Just listening, I've been listening a lot to this session and the previous one, and it seems to me that much of the challenge that we're facing is a matter of public perception. It's not so much that, even what Melissa Bobadilla was saying, is people don't understand how that a negative vote, it has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not you got enough positive votes. That's all you needed to do, is get enough positive votes. That's why a simple majority is easier for the average Joe to get. I understand, because I'm one of these people who's a government person and I am into simple majority or super majority, but that doesn't mean that that's not how a normal political voting structure works. And this is not supposed to be a political voting structure, but that's what folks are accustomed to when they vote for something. This is how many the winner got. This is how many the loser got. If the no's are more than the yeses, then you lost, or vice versa. That's what folks on the street understand. And it's a bit too complex in the verbiage as we currently have it. If I could not explain it to my grandma and she didn't get it, then we have a problem. And that was all I was really wanting to say. And I think it was said much more eloquently by Commissioner Bobadilla. Additionally, the BCCI did an excellent job of being able to present to us what the majority of the people wanted to say. And we were overrun with all of the people who were concerned about the no votes counting against them. The challenge that we're facing actually is truly one of, do we have enough people who are going to see it through to the end? I live on 130th. You do have a lot of people who rent here. Because of that, you may have gone through at one time, and then the next time you went through, you didn't get the same people. When you have all of these factors going on, as well as being near major streets where everyone wants it not on my block, we have to make sure we're not pushing anything through. But we also have, because of the failures, the people who have worked so hard to try to get their projects through have the ear of the city council and perhaps of the mayor, and they're speaking very loudly. To what Commissioner Bobadilla was pointing out, I suspect that we may not want to set that precedent, but the commissioners for the city as well as the mayor are not wanting it to seem as though we as the traffic commission are keeping them from getting what they want. So we have to walk a fine line and find a balance as to how to make sure that we're being fair and that it's perceived as fair, because I think a lot of it has to do with, we need a marketing team. We're not being perceived as being fair. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back to Ms. Etheridge in a moment. I do agree with that, and I appreciate the info and comments on that to Commissioner Bobadilla, because that's some insight on that. Let Ms. Etheridge speak, and then I want to go back to the number of percentages because I have a question for the commission when we're done with that. So Ms. Etheridge.
So I think we have a way forward here. If it doesn't matter whether the votes are added in or not, from the ballot, non-return ballots are added to the nose or not, then can we change the language to not have that be a practice? Because for whatever reason, that's what we're believing in the community about that. Then the other thing that I think is encouraging is that the information that I presented on June 3rd was that we had a pretty wide range of what was acceptable, including up to the 67% amongst the neighborhood associations. There were 2 that didn't vote, that didn't come to a vote. There were 2 that didn't have a quorum, and then the remaining 5. One of them voted 51%, and the rest said that they wanted a return of. These are suggestions to use. We use these as examples, and knowing that you guys have the final say about, and a little more knowledge about some of this than we do. But I wouldn't, there wasn't, my sense from that about a good percentage of these neighborhood associations saying that 67% return and a 67% pass rate were acceptable, means that you have quite a bit of wiggle room to decide where you want to set the bar, and that their main concern is that it's fair, not necessarily to win.
Thank you. And that's an excellent part for my question. And that was one for Commissioner Urbanski as well. I think Commissioner Bobadilla kind of alluded to it, and I see your hand. Is your hand still up, or do you read hand?
No, sorry. I just wanted to add one more thing. Thank you, Commissioner. I really feel that a lot of this is, you're right, Commissioner Moore, is perception, and a lot of it is education that we need to relate to the public. Whenever some of these big projects that are going to happen, traffic calming projects, I know there's a lot of other stuff that people share, but why aren't we putting it on the quarterly newsletter or something that comes out as just as a reminder? Hey, reminder, there's a big traffic calming project coming. You live in this neighborhood, you may want to go to the website. People really read that newsletter more. It's because it's not there. It's not bombarding you often. It's only so many times. It's only so many times a year. But I believe that's going to really help. And I think there's just a very strong push right now in all our state and the nation that people are demanding transparency, and people, probably the community here, did not understand how these numbers were being calculated and how the outcome was resulting. Thank you, Commissioner.
So thank you, Commissioner Bobadilla. Commissioner Khasho, or sorry, Mr. Khasho.
Yeah, I just want to remind the commissioner that in the past, and even recently, with all this written testimony we received, the hard part was people struggling with is that it should be based on the total number of cars that come back, regardless what the percentage is, 51, 67. That's why the non-return cars it's an automatic no. Anyway, they said no, you should, a lot of times said it should be calculated based on the total number of cars that comes back. And that's because people who doesn't vote, they say, okay, when we do elections, people who doesn't vote, they don't affect the election. So they were tying it to an election, official election, you know, and that's the part that makes it a little murky. So if we stay, you know, with this 67 or 51 and you change the language, it's still based on the number of cars that goes out. And then when somebody want to come back and ask, hey, show me how many came back. Oh, this is not, it's not good. It's not true because you did not get the rest of those cars that didn't come back. And you're basing it on 67%. So that's the issue with the whole thing. For many years, you know, it was an issue, but then people worked harder to get those cars turned in, and people who worked hard on getting the cars in actually made it. Many, all the time, 99% of the time. Also, you know, the wish of the city council, they want to reduce that percentage. They want to make sure that the chance of a project to go through at this time will be more than the previous or than the system we have right now. So I hope we come with a lower percentage just to give a better chance for a project to go through. And the reason I'm saying this is in the past, we treated most of the streets that they have bigger problems with speeding and cut through traffic. So what's left? Kind of the medium level to a low level problems. And that's where we're having problems, you know, for people to participate, because some of them, they look out, they drive through, they say, we don't have a problem. I don't want traffic calming devices on my street. So it's really harder to convince everybody of that smaller problem. Before, when you have a big problem, everybody saw it, everybody complained about it. So for those reasons, I think we should look at lowering the percentage. I don't care how, you know, you do it, but we need to look at making it simpler for the project to go through, but not way too low that, you know, in the future things will change. So I did some calculation with what I suggested, like when I said, okay, we'll get 60% of the cards back and 67% of them be yes. This will account for only 40% yes cards from the total. And Commissioner Urbanski said, okay, this is awful, let's do it 50 and 67. So you calculate this, and this is only 34% of the total saying yes.
But historically, that isn't the case because your data shows that at least 60% of the people do send in their cards.
I know, but in reality, yeah, no. based on the number of cards returned, still it will work. But if you want to truly compare it to percentage of the number of cards that goes out, it's only 34% approval rate.
Thank you, Mr. Khasho, because that Commissioner Urbanski was going to be my point, is that I understand what we've said about the rest, but if you need to change the verbiage first and make it very clear what the goal and what the percentage is, because the question, and I think the reason that the 67% of 67% came back is that that's 51%. So I think that if you were to do something along the lines of what Mr. Khasho said, of 60% need to be returned with 51% pass, then you have your majority and you have enough of a vote that it feels like you're getting the piece. The other part I think that we've talked about before, though, is there's still the concern that sometimes the no vote was put in there that you didn't have to return it because there are, as we've seen in testimony, people who did not want their neighbors to know that they were against the project. And by making a majority process out of this and removing the exactly as I think Commissioner Bobadilla said, take that away. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many no votes. What you really care about is how many yes votes, right? Do you get 51% of your majority? Yes. Now, how many do you need to hear from? My own opinion is I like the 60% return, and I like the requirement of I believe 67% of that. Well, it can't be 67% of that, but 70% of that makes it 51%. And you remove the verbiage that says you have to vote. A no vote is well, in the end, it doesn't really matter, but that should be taken out, right? Because that's caused the confusion. So Commissioner Urbanski, and then I think we need to go back to Commissioner Bobadilla.
personally, I think the system's too complicated and confusing right now. I don't think when people receive the cards, it looks like a voting pamphlet or a voting card. And there's all these choices, no, yes, or abstain, and all of that's irrelevant. The only thing that counts is whether there's a yes. So we don't even need them to return the cards unless it's a yes. And we want 2/3 or 67% of the majority, or 67% have to be supportive of this, and that's all that counts. And whether they vote no or abstain is completely irrelevant the way I see it, and it shouldn't even be mentioned on the card. If you want this thing to pass, you need to get 2/3 of the people in that neighborhood to vote yes. But even that is not fair, because you could say that implies that 1/3 of the people are against it. But I bet if you asked 1/3 of the people to submit a no vote because they were against it, you wouldn't get that response. You know, in other words, if you said the default is to pass this new traffic calming thing in your neighborhood, if you're against it, submit no on this card. And you would require at least 33% or 1/3 of the population to say no. I bet you wouldn't get it. And in other words, it would pass, because there is a certain kind of inertia for people to send in those cards. And right now it's biased against the people who want something to happen.
Okay, before we go to Commissioner Bobadilla, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying then that you should remove all of the verbiage, but you basically say you need to return this as a yes, and you need X amount to pass. That's it.
Yeah, that's because that's ultimately what we're saying, right?
Okay, but you can return, you can return and say no to make a statement.
No, but the thing is, when you do that, then it makes it sound like you're voting no, and that note's going to be counted as a no, whereas in fact it isn't.
But a ballot isn't a ballot, a yes or no or abstain? Isn't that you get a
Well,
choice
but
of
it's
yes
not a
or no?
ballot, as Mr. Khasho has said. It's not a ballot. It's not like a
Okay,
vote, really.
I'd like to hear from Commissioner Bobadilla, though, please. You're on mute.
You're muted.
Sorry. I'm in favor of lowering the number. I'm happy to consider that and vote on that. But I'm still disturbed at this moment about if we're wanting to move the number lower also to encourage the passage of projects, because that could really make things very murky. It just, and I haven't done none of the math or anything, but just kind of thinking out loud right here and looking at these, even if we agree to a certain number, I want to make sure we all understand that these projects are probably, even under the new formula, new number we come up with, are not going to pass. So I'm a little confused too, though, because you're also telling us, Jabra, and I'm sorry, you're the messenger, okay, that the council also wants us to consider this, but with really, I think it's with the ultimate, the final outcome of that these projects should pass to make the community happy. But let me tell you something there, that if we do that, it almost seems that we're going to start making rulings or decisions on a case-by-case basis, which is not the right thing to do either. That's not fair. People want fairness and want to make sure they understand the basic rule, and we provide the evidence to show them that. So I'm not in favor of all of a sudden forcing these projects that are probably not going to pass.
Well, 3 of the 4 of them would, though, Commissioner Bobadilla, if you look at the chart that Mr. Khasho had.
Why does it got that one?
Option number 3, just as a clarification.
Yeah.
And then Commissioner Khasho, you had a comment? Or Mr. Khasho?
I have one comment, the council did not want to push these projects that failed, they did not say we have to have these, going through. The council want to reduce the percentage to give a better chance for the projects to pass. That's the intention. So that's what I was looking for. And I agree with you, Commissioner Bobadilla, is yeah, we have to have a principle, and it should be based on some majority. Yeah, we're not gonna start tailoring it left, right to make a project pass. I agree with you. And I'm sure the majority of the commissioners agrees with me too, and you. So Chairman Conway suggested, oh, let's get 60% of the cards back and then 70%, so we'll have 51%. Then it's simpler to say, let's just get 51% of the cards, yes, and that's it.
I see that. Thank you for clarifying that. Is that basically in the end what was happening?
Yeah, so it's simpler than saying 67 and no cards will be returned. Basically, we'll say 51% of those cards that go out must come back with a yes, without saying a non-returned card is a no. But then people will say, okay, they'll try to tie it to a ballot, voting ballot, which I always try not to say it's a ballot, it's a response card. So I'll separate the two. I always try to do this. So that's probably a good option, and for the projects that failed before, what we could do is we could poll the plan again. We could give it another shot, poll the plan, and we'll give them this new information. And if they get the 51% yes, they'll go to construction. I mean, it can't be fairer than this.
So
But-
following that logic though, Mr. Khasho, then all four of these would pass.
Not
If
saying,
everything returned the same way,
no,
51%,
no, based on the current return, none of them will pass.
that is correct. But you were saying we reduced it to 51%, then
Yeah.
under that, all four of these would pass if the numbers were exactly the same again.
No, they will
No?
not, because they are all less than 51% yes. Here, let me share my screen again and to show the numbers.
Scenario one with 50% of the cards of the total. Oh, I see. Well, all right, I'm with you there. Oh, okay, I see now why two, okay, why your other one, I see what that other column was. All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's not letting me in.
Oh, that's a clarification. I see that now. You're saying that basically that would have been 50, where did it go? Was 50%, 49, 44, and 39%. So actually, none of them would have passed. They would have needed to get one more vote, 3 more votes. Okay, so realistically, that's a confirmation as well. Because none of these then would have passed at 51%. So the reason they passed, 3 of 4 of them passed, is because, as Commissioner Urbanski had pointed out, you lowered it all the way down to 40%. 40% of the people on the entire street can control that. And I think that's from my concern. Commissioner Bobadilla's is the language and clarification. I think Commissioner Urbanski is in agreement. And if I understood Commissioner Moore as well, that it needs to be very clear what you are or not voting on and what needs to happen. It sounds like one of the options, Mr. Khasho, is that we are sending out X number of cards and X number of yes votes are required for this to pass. Is that,
Yeah.
would that help? And so you basically replace the verbiage. It says not returning a vote is a no. We are sending out, you were getting, or 137, well, 130, take Wilson, 132 response cards are being sent out. In order for this measure to pass, 65 response cards must be returned with an affirmative indication.
Yeah.
And if you included that in the verbiage, that seems to be, does that help, Commissioner Bobadilla, Commissioner Moore?
I need to write that whatever we're going to come up with, and I want to see it. I'm sorry, I'm a sight person too, and that I need to read it.
No, but in essence, then you're saying if we were very clear about how many votes are sent out or how many response cards being sent out, how many are needed to pass, and what your response, what your check mark on the response card means,
Yes,
then,
I'm in agreement
okay.
with you. Yeah, sorry, I thought you were trying to, like, this is a verbiage, like I can't
No,
agree.
but basically something similar along the, and then Commissioner Moore, it sounded like that was, I saw a nod
Yeah.
of the, okay, and then Commissioner Bansky, is there a concern then that 51%, which is, I think if you crunched 67% of 67%, you hit.
I like it. I think it's very clear, and most people will say, yes, a simple majority. The only thing that I would ask for clarification is whether the card includes that statement that a non-return counts as a no vote, because again, it makes people, so I would remove that. If you take that out, again, it removes that other complaint or that misunderstanding that people have.
Right,
So
because
basically, then I think this is very clear and very simple majority. You need a simple majority of yes votes. And don't confuse it by saying that's, non-return count as a no vote. And
now you can.
it's irrelevant, really.
Okay, one clarification though that you said earlier, that the card should have the option to, because we do have some historic numbers, it should have the option to vote yes, no, or abstain, which would
Sure,
impact
that's
the
fine.
percentage.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're clear on that part and returning the other one. That's good. I think a recommendation then at this point would be to Mr. Khasho, as we would typically, you would write up a measure that we would, some sort of verbiage that we could look at and make a motion on?
What, we don't need any to do a motion tonight or decide which way. You gave me
Correct.
direction, we want to consider the 51%. So what I need to do now is get a copy of the existing program and change the verbiage on it. And I will show what it used to say and what we like, I will strike through what we delete and what we add. And that's what the commission will vote on at when it's ready to come in.
Okay, very good.
And then it will go to council for final approval. We'll have like a traffic commission issue on it. And I can't, to be honest with you, I can't remember if we had a hearing on the program last time we did an update or not. I believe we did, but I'll look at the history, what we did. And at the next meeting, not the next meeting, when we meet next, we will, it will be ready the way we did it before. And then you will have a chance to review it and vote on it. And we'll go from there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think some of the concerns were just, I think the other piece that we should consider then in relation to this is what it sounds like, what I heard Commissioner Bobadilla said it the clearest would be that the person who has instigated this process or initiated the process, who has started the traffic calming request and has gotten the 51% of the initial, needs to be very clear that they are trying to seek yes votes, and they don't care what happens to the rest of it. What they need is a certain percentage, and this is the number you're looking for, and this is what your work is, and the onus should be on that process, and that can certainly help, and community meetings as well. But I think it would help because what I heard from Ms. Etheridge and Commissioner Bobadilla is that there was confusion about what the no, and the no is really completely irrelevant. What you need is how many yeses do I need to get this thing to work? So thank you, Mr. Khasho. Appreciate that for the time. Is there other comments, Mr. Commissioner Bansky, Commissioner Moore?
Good.
All right, very good, Commissioner Bobadilla. All right, I appreciate that. Appreciate the input and the discussion on that. I think as we've seen here, just taking the time to go through this part, that once the first part begins, I think in a future meeting, we need to revisit discussions, because what I've seen from some of these are that they typically seem to be near a school zone. And there needs to be obviously some sort of traffic process interaction. I think as a NAC chair, I can tell you that working with the school district on one of the schools in our NAC, we've had parents who asked for crosswalks to be put in, We've had parents ask for those crosswalks to be removed. And then we've asked for them to be put back in again. And over the course of years, parents feel that yes, they want a crosswalk. No, they don't want it. They want crossing guards. They don't want crossing guards. I think that there's definitely something that goes beyond the scope of the Traffic Commission, which is a community interaction for that as well. Ms. Etheridge, you had a comment?
Yes, so we had other feedback that came from the NAC outside of the voting process, and I reported on those in June.
Correct.
And I'm wondering, will we be able to visit those in the fall, maybe when
I think the idea, at least
or
in my,
maybe,
no, I know where you're going with that. I think as we talked about in the last meeting, and the suggestion that I put forth was we should be focusing on one piece at a time, and we should address this as it goes and see how the number of votes materializes the feedback that we get and the work that goes. And then, as we did note, I think one of the bigger things that we saw in the last meeting was the theme that I heard, at least, and I'm sure the other commissioners would agree, is that the scope of traffic calming swelled much larger than just traffic calming. There were people who felt that they needed, they were talking about speed things. They wanted the cameras. The people running red lights in front of school, or the running stop sign in front of schools. That's, as Mr. Khasho noted, not something that a traffic calming device is going to fix. There is a bigger issue that is a bigger scale that anybody who's a parent should be talking about with the school district, not the traffic commission. That's something to me. But in fairness, as we said, or at least I said, we would revisit, and I believe the best methodical way to do that is one step at a time in different
so
parts. Mr.
I
Khasho?
might, could I, oh,
Fine.
I just let Mr. Khasho here go on, and if you have something back on that, Ms. Etheridge, then we can go. from
okay,
there.
sure.
All right. What I'm gonna say, if anybody has a complaint about any traffic issue, pedestrian issue, bicycle issue, they could send it to the city traffic engineer. They could send it to me. Typically, we deal with these. Something that I could solve under the issues that I can solve under my authority, I will do it. If I cannot solve it under my authority, typically I schedule it before the traffic commission. That's how the process works. Traffic calming is a separate program. You have to go through the traffic calming process and program. So speeding, cut through traffic, that's a different story. It comes to me too, or to the transportation division. And then we do all our studies before even the commission hears of it. It takes a year to get it to the hearing piece of the, the hearing part of the process. It takes a lot of time. So that's how things start. But if the school principal or the internal staff of the school has issues, they deal with their safety director. They deal with it internally, and then it comes to us. That's the only difference between the two processes. But any traffic issue, ped issue, safety issue, bike issue, street lights, signals, you name it, it comes to the transportation division of the engineering. And that's where the process starts. And the process actually, it's codified, it's in the city code. It's under major issues and minor issues. Minor issues, they say, yeah, city traffic engineer can solve it. Major issues, it needs to go to the traffic commission. So that, yeah. If any of your neighbors has issues or they see problems, please let them give me a call. They could also go online and fill a form too. There's a complaint that goes sometimes to the police or operation, and it comes to us at the end.
I think that, and my suggestion was going to be that what the next topic that seemed to be of top of mind to most of the neighborhood residents that we got feedback from was this issue of safety and hotspots within the neighborhood. So not always is it an entire street that's causing the problem, but they feel that, and I wonder, Jabra, if sometimes the traffic calming is used because of a hotspot rather than an entire street worth of problem. But if that could be our next area of focus, Ernie, that I think would be.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we've talked about, and we've gone to, I've had discussions as a NAC chair and also as the traffic commissioner, is that there is definitely an education issue within the community. We've had people at public hearings bring up a question and they do not understand and are not aware of the process. Anybody at any time in any public meeting that the city holds has exactly what we begin with the first thing: public comments for issues that are not on the agenda. That is true at every NAC meeting. Every NAC meeting has the opportunity for someone to say, I think there's a problem with this. And it's the responsibility of the BCCI. It's the responsibility of the NAC. It's the responsibility of the community to say, okay, what do I do and where do I go? And to find out, because as Mr. Khasho pointed out, some people want to put in a sign that says "Don't parking" next to the stop sign because we can't see the street. That's within his purview. You don't need a traffic commission. You don't need traffic calming. Somebody can put a sign up. For something else that's different, I think it does. So I think the next piece to that would be a discussion about what traffic calming involves and what the community can do and what the BCCI can do to educate people and say, these are things, and it's not just traffic. It is anything within the city that is a concern. You can go to the city council meeting, and at the beginning of the city council meeting is the exact same thing. You have the right to sit down and speak. I've done it myself, and bring up a topic that is not on the agenda and say, this is a concern for me. And if it's within their purview, they'll take care of it. If it's not, I've seen them say, well, we'll send this to the correct person, and they'll put you in touch with somebody. So yes, I think the next part would be to consider that next step.
These hot spots for safety issue. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Khasho?
Yeah, even when people bring it up at the NAC meetings, typically the staff liaison for the NACs, they will take note of it and they will let me know this was requested at the meeting and we'll take care of it. So at the end, it will come to traffic engineering. If they asked at the NAC, that's what will happen. If they're at city council and they ask, typically the public works director will bring it to us. They'll say such and such person mentioned this at the city council. Could you take a look at it? And we'll contact the person and take care of it. So there are many venues that at the end it will get resolved. Yeah, if you have hotspots and people you know of it, let that person who brought it up contact us or send us an email or call me or whatever. Just let it pass through. So all what we need to know is to know about it, that something is happening and we need to take care of it. That's all what we care about.
Thank you. And I think Commissioner Moore would agree that I would like to at least commend the NAC liaisons that I've had the pleasure working with, because they have taken all the items that have come back and taken those back to the neighborhood program and to the city. So I appreciate that work and diligence in that. So I'd like to recognize that. Thank you. Is there any other comments then on that? I think that we have a good working process for this. The summer being what it's been and the churn right now. Mr. Khasho, I'm not sure we need a meeting in August. Most of the NACs aren't meeting either. The recommendation, considerations from commissioners? Because I'm thinking that we could wait until the fall sessions begin, at least through August. I would like to see if, well, first, as Mr. Khasho noted, I'd like to see what happens with alternate cone, and I'd like to see what would happen with perhaps the other openings. Although this group has been very much involved in it, it might be easier to just follow through with the alternate Vice Chair McLean. But I think we should let the thing get written. Let Mr. Khasho write that up. Let's take some consideration time to consider it. and move from there perhaps in September unless someone feels otherwise.
Okay, we will do, and we'll, like I said, we'll note the changes on the program and we'll bring it for review to take a vote on. So,
Okay.
yeah, so in August, we will not have a meeting. So it will be September meeting.
Okay, very good. Other final comments? All right, I appreciate it. And then I think, is there an opportunity then for the commissioners to send something to you, Mr. Khasho, as a follow-up or?
You're welcome to send anything. Yes.
All right, and Commissioner McLean, that will give him an opportunity to do so as well. So I appreciate that. And then Commissioner Bobadilla, we can make sure, I think, like we talked about, let's make sure we're getting things that are important in the keys. I think Commissioner Urbanski said that as well. There are definitely, everybody I think has a point that they feel is critical to make sure is involved in this process. So excellent job this evening. Excellent job.
Yeah. So in September, it will not be the final. I mean, you have to review it, and so there is still room for improvement and changes too. But
Correct.
It's getting solidified that we'll get to a finalized percentage. That's what we're looking for.
Exactly. All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, that being said then, I believe we will call the meeting adjourned, can end the recording, and we are finished. Ms. Warner, do we need to wait for that?